There is one line in these leaked messages that nobody stopped on. Not the apology, not the timeline, not the part everybody screenshotted and argued about for a week. One line, typed late on the night of the 4th of July by an 18-year-old sitting somewhere on the mainland while a mother a few miles away was still waiting for her son to walk through a door. "I have Nolan's phone and keys." That's it. It was read out on television. It was published on a commentary channel by the side it helps. It was presented, deliberately, as part of a package, as proof that these young men had nothing to hide. And it sat there, unremarked. In the middle of a conversation, everyone else was mining for something louder. Because here is what that sentence actually is. It is the first confirmed location of the single most important object in this entire case. Written down, time-stamped, volunteered by the person holding it. Now hold 2 numbers next to it. 3 in the afternoon. That's the last time anyone says they saw Nolan Wells alive, near the western tip of Horn Island. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office has stated it publicly. 4:31 in the afternoon. That's when a GPS unit belonging to the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources logged that boat leaving the island. Not a memory, not a statement, a machine writing down a position with no stake in the outcome. 91 minutes. 91 minutes between the last time a human being says they saw him and the moment a satellite recorded that boat pulling away from the island without him on it. And in all 7 weeks of this, the press conferences, the panels, the letters, the lawyers, the federal charges, no one with any authority has publicly said what happened inside those 91 minutes. Not a disputed account, not a contradicted account, no account. There is exactly one object that could reconstruct that window minute by minute. It was in Nolan's pocket. It recorded where he was, continuously, the way every phone does, whether the person carrying it thinks about it or not. And that object did not stay on the island. It came home, in somebody else's hand, to a house on the mainland, before the search had properly begun. You've been watching this case for 7 weeks. You've probably scrolled past 3 videos about it today. And somewhere in the last fortnight, you felt something shift. The story stopped feeling urgent and started feeling like noise. Hold on to that feeling, because that feeling is how a case dies. Not with a verdict, not with an arrest, with an audience getting tired. 7 weeks is the exact point where the satellite trucks leave the parking lot, where the hashtag stops trending, where a family is left alone in a room with a sealed file and a phone that nobody has opened. So this is not another timeline video. We are not relitigating the island. We are going to follow one object. From the moment it came off that boat to a letter written to a district attorney 4 days ago. And we are going to show you why, with every single party in this case publicly agreeing it should be opened, it is still closed. Before a single word of these messages matters, you need to understand how they got in front of your eyes, because that changes what they're worth. These are text messages between Christine Wonsley, Nolan's mother, and Warren Hudson, one of the young men connected to that trip. They began circulating publicly in the middle of August. They were not leaked by an investigator. They were not verified, authenticated, or released by any authority in the state of Mississippi. They entered circulation through the side they helped, and they were presented on a commentary channel as proof of innocence. Now, that does not make them false. Let's be precise about this, because precision is the only thing anybody in this case is short of. It makes them curated. You are reading the portion of a conversation that somebody chose to show you, beginning where they chose to begin it, ending where they chose to stop. Nobody has confirmed the set is complete. Nobody has confirmed nothing was removed from the middle of it. That is the frame. Hold it while we look at what's actually in them. Because here's what will surprise you, and it should, because almost no one covering this case has said it out loud. A lot of what's in these messages is genuinely good for Warren Hudson. Start with what isn't in dispute at all. Warren Hudson contacted Nolan's mother late on the night of the 4th of July to tell her Nolan was missing. That's confirmed by mainstream reporting entirely independent of this leak. He didn't wait for someone to come to him. He asked her whether he should call the Coast Guard. He made the call. She asked him where the cars were. He answered. She asked where they launched from. He answered, and he sent her the launch location. And then she asked the question that matters more than any other question anyone has asked in this case. When was the last time you saw him? His answer came back that night, before a lawyer had spoken to anybody, before a press conference existed, before there was a public narrative anyone needed to protect. 3 in the afternoon, the west tip, north side of Horn Island. Now watch what happens to that number. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office would later publicly state that Nolan was last seen near the island at around 3 in the afternoon. The same figure. A frightened 18-year-old texting a missing boy's mother around midnight gave the exact time that a sheriff's office would eventually give the public. Weeks before they gave it. That matters. It matters more than most people covering this case want to admit, because it doesn't fit the story they're selling. A statement produced before anyone knew what they'd need it to say is worth more than an interview given 7 weeks later after everyone has had time to think about how it sounds. That's not a technicality. That's how investigators weigh things. So on the narrow question of what time Nolan was last seen, Warren Hudson's account and the sheriff's office account line up, which is exactly why the next part is so strange. Because that answer establishes the beginning of the window with unusual credibility. And then it stops. It doesn't touch the window itself. Every single message in that exchange was sent hours later. From the mainland, after the search had already started, after the Coast Guard had already been called. And that is the thing the commentary built on these texts refuses to understand. A young man behaving decently at 11 at night is not evidence about 4 in the afternoon. It is not evidence of guilt. It is not evidence of innocence. It is evidence about 11 at night. Guilty people call mothers. Innocent people call mothers. Frightened people call mothers. Conduct is not an alibi, and anybody presenting a midnight text message as a verdict on a 4 o'clock afternoon is asking you to accept something that no court in this country would accept. But the same messages that pin down 3 in the afternoon contain one other thing: the line about the phone. And the phone is the only object in this entire case that was in both places at once, inside the 91 minutes, and inside a house on the mainland by the end of the same day. Let's build the window out of the only material that can't argue back. 4:31 in the afternoon. GPS data from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources obtained by CBS News shows the boat leaving Horn Island at approximately that time. That is not a witness. A count. That is not a memory. That is a machine logging a position, and the departure was not routine. Audio from a private towing service confirms the group reported their boat was taking on water, a failing bilge pump. They did not simply decide the day was over and head for the ramp. They called for help. They were towed back to the mainland. So assemble what the record actually holds: a vessel in trouble, leaving a barrier island at a fixed log time, under tow, without Nolan Wells aboard. That's the end of the window. The start of the window is 3 in the afternoon, the west tip, north side, given by Warren Hudson at midnight and later matched by the sheriff's office. In between, 91 minutes. And here is the thing that should stop you 7 weeks in. Nobody has filled them. Not the sheriff's office, not the district attorney, not any statement, any press conference, any court filing, any interview that has been made public. There is no official, published account of what happened on that island between the last confirmed sighting of Nolan Wells and the moment that boat was logged leaving. We are not telling you that anyone has refused to give one. Nobody has publicly been asked to account for that window on the record, so nobody has publicly failed to. We are telling you something narrower and colder. 7 weeks after an 18-year-old died, the window in which he most likely died is, as far as the public record goes, blank. And there is one device that was inside it, recording the entire time. There's a complication in those same messages, and it needs handling carefully, because this is where a lot of channels have gone off a cliff. In the leaked texts, Warren Hudson tells Christine Wonsley that Nolan went out on a 22-foot Triton offshore. He then says that he himself was on a 24-foot tide line, and that on the way out to the island, the two of them were on separate boats. Two manufacturers, two hulls, two boats. In one exchange, sent the night Nolan went missing. Then, on the Nancy Grace broadcast, a guest raised something else. He claimed that the Marine Resources report lists the vessel that was searched as a tide craft. Different company, different boat? Now, understand this clearly, because the distinction is the entire point of this section. That claim about the report has not been confirmed by any official source. It was asserted on a television panel and sourced to social media. This channel is not going to tell you it is true. We have not seen the report. Neither has the person who said it, as far as anyone has established. But the underlying question does not go away just because the claim is unverified. Because a boat is not a detail. A boat is the container that holds every other fact in this case. The GPS plotter that logged 431 sits on a specific vessel. The people who were interviewed were on specific vessels. The search, when it came, was conducted on a specific vessel. If the identification of those boats has not been consistently recorded across every account given so far, then every timeline anybody has built on top of them inherits that uncertainty. A GPS track from the wrong hull is not evidence. It's a different boat's afternoon. So the questions are simple, and no authority has answered them publicly. How many vessels made that trip? Who was on each one? And whether the boat named in the official report is the same boat these young men have been describing for 7 weeks. Nobody with the power to answer that has answered it. Go back to the night of the 4th of July, before the lawyers, before the press conferences, before any of this had a name or a hashtag or a federal case attached to it. Nolan had not come back. Nobody knew where he was. And somebody in that family opened a locator app. The phone was not lost at sea. It was not on the bottom of the Mississippi Sound. It was not in the water where they were searching. It was sitting inside a house on the mainland, at the home of one of the young men who had been on that trip. They drove there, they collected it, that same evening. Understand the sequence because it is the strangest fact in this case, and it has been repeated so often that people have stopped actually hearing it. The 18-year-old did not come home. His phone came home. It made the return journey across the water without him. It was in a friend's house before the search had properly begun. And the person holding it had already said so in writing to his mother. Now, what she found when she opened it. Christine Wonsley went through the phone with her sister. On the 10th of July, she described what she found to Michael Strawn on Good Morning America. Nolan had 2 Snapchat accounts. Both of them were empty. She was specific about why that stopped her, and her reasoning is not emotional. It's technical. Snapchat holds photos and videos for roughly 24 hours before they clear on their own. Nolan had been at an all-day party on a barrier island on the 4th of July. When she opened that phone that same night, the window had not closed yet. There should have been something in it. There was nothing. And this was a teenager who, in his mother's own words, filmed everything when he was out having fun. That was the pattern of his life. Documented daily, same 2 accounts. It's what he did. And on the last day of it, the record simply stopped. She also said the phone's location history did not match what his friends had been seeing through Snapchat. Now, the counterweight, and it is not a small one, and it belongs right here, not buried at the end of a video where nobody reaches it. The young men connected to that trip have publicly rejected the suggestion that anything was deleted from Nolan's phone. They have said it directly. They have said it repeatedly. They have not backed away from it. They have not been charged with any offense. And no authority, not the sheriff's office, not the district attorney, not any forensic examiner, has confirmed that any data was removed by anyone. So what you have is a claim, a denial, and a device. Ben Crump said in July that he intended to hire an expert to determine whether the missing data could be recovered, either from the phone itself or from Snapchat's own servers, where deleted content does not simply cease to exist the way people assume it does. That was July. That expert has still not opened it. Here is what happens when 91 minutes go unaccounted for, and a phone goes unopened, and the only people who could speak with authority say nothing. The space fills anyway. It fills with whatever's available. A toxicology report for Nolan Wells circulated online for weeks. People quoted from it. Channels built entire videos around it. Comment sections argued over its numbers, line by line, as though they were reading a document. It is fake. Officials have confirmed it is fraudulent. No official toxicology has been released in this case, by anyone, to anyone, at any point. Someone manufactured a medical document about a dead teenager, put it into circulation, and it traveled far enough that authorities had to publicly denounce it. That was not the only thing manufactured. Videos of Nolan Wells have appeared online that were generated by artificial intelligence. Videos of his family, a boy who died in July, made to move and speak on a screen by strangers who never met him, distributed to an audience that could not always tell the difference, and then it stopped being content. 3 people have now been federally charged in 3 separate cases over threats connected to this investigation. Edward James Porter, from Illinois, is accused of sending threatening messages through Facebook to the mother of Warren Hudson. Investigators say one of those messages contained photographs of her children. Michelle Francine Edwards from Cincinnati, Ohio, is accused of phoning in bomb threats to 2 Mississippi government offices in the days after Nolan's death. Joseph Alfredo Vasquez Dumars, from California, is accused of threatening a Chancery Court judge, Illinois, Ohio, California. None of them appears to have any connection to Nolan Wells. None of them knew his family. None of them was anywhere near that island. They watched this case on their phones, from 3 different corners of the country, and decided they had standing to threaten people in Mississippi. The Hudson family gave recordings of some of the calls they received to the Sun-Herald. One caller says, "Justice for Nolan Wells, son for a son." Another calls Benjamin Hudson the father of a murderer. No one in that family has been charged with anything. Sheriff John Ledbetter had to issue a public statement asking people to stop spreading unverified information about an active death investigation. That is what an information vacuum produces. Not truth, not pressure that helps. Federal indictments and a sheriff begging the internet to stop. If you want more of this case covered the way we're covering it, sourced, attributed, and honest about what nobody knows, subscribing takes you 2 seconds. It costs you nothing. And it's the only reason a case like this doesn't quietly vanish from your feed. Here is how fast a claim moves in this case, documented from beginning to end in 72 hours. On the 10th of July, Ben Crump held a press conference and referenced a video taken from a boat near the island. On that recording, a young man's voice can be heard demanding his phone back. Crump said his legal team believed that voice belonged to Nolan Wells. Within hours, it was everywhere. The phone argument, the confrontation, Nolan's last words. On the 13th of July, 3 days later, a young man named Tristan Shepard went to ABC News and said the voice on that recording was his own. He described standing waist-deep in the water, having a disagreement with his girlfriend, being criticized by an acquaintance who walked past. That exchange escalating into a physical altercation. He said Nolan was not the one shouting. 3 days. That's the gap between a claim entering the world and the person actually in the recording correcting it. And you already know how this ends. The claim is still circulating. The correction is not. Every unverified fragment since has followed the same path through the same empty space, because that space was never filled by anyone with actual authority to fill it, which brings us to the one thing capable of ending all of it, and to the reason it hasn't been. In the middle of July, both sides agreed to a joint forensic examination of Nolan's phone. Read that again slowly. Agreed. The family wanted it. The district attorney's office wanted it. The attorney representing the young men from the boat wanted it. There is no faction in this case arguing that the phone should stay closed, not one. Every single party with a position has said, publicly, that this device should be examined. It has not been examined. 48 days. And in the last 2 weeks, the two lawyers at the center of that failure have made statements that cannot both be true. Tyler Cox represents 3 of Nolan's friends. Speaking to Dan Abrams on Sirius XM, Cox said he has reason to believe, and does believe, that the Wells family has not cooperated with law enforcement. He said he does not think they have turned in Nolan's phone. The attorney for the young men publicly accusing the dead boy's family of withholding the evidence. Ahmad Smith represents the Wells family. On the 17th of August, he wrote directly to Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McIlrath. His letter states that to the extent there has been any suggestion the family has been unwilling or has failed to cooperate with the investigation, that is not the case. It says the family and their legal team are actively conducting an independent investigation and remain cooperative with her office. It states that Nolan's phone has been made available for examination by forensic experts from both sides, and then it addresses the delay directly. According to the family's attorneys, Nolan's parents were out of state at the time of the scheduled examination, and the parties had not finalized a forensic protocol. That phrase does a lot of work, so let's unpack it. A forensic protocol is the written rulebook for how a device gets opened, chain of custody, preservation of the extracted data, who gets access to what comes off it, and when the phone goes back to the family. Without that document, a competent examiner will not touch the device, because anything pulled off it could be challenged later. Smith closes his letter by asking the district attorney to confirm whether the examination will still take place at the location both sides had previously selected, a community college. That is a man asking a prosecutor to confirm a room. 2 named attorneys, 2 positions on the public record 4 days apart. They cannot both be accurate. This channel is not going to tell you which one is lying, because we do not know. And anyone telling you they know is guessing at you with confidence. What we can tell you is what sits between those 2 letters. 48 days. 1 device, 2 Snapchat accounts that a mother says were empty when she opened them. A set of friends who say nothing was ever deleted, and 91 minutes that a location log could reconstruct in a single afternoon by a competent examiner in a room that 2 lawyers are still trying to confirm. A question with a factual answer. Recoverable. That has now outlived the news cycle, the trending hashtag, and the boy's 19th birthday. There's a reason the vacuum exists, and it isn't the one your timeline has been telling you. On the 22nd of July, at the NAACP National Convention in Chicago, Ben Crump stood beside Elmore and Christine Wonsley and announced the findings of the autopsy their family had paid for. Cause of death, undetermined. Manner of death, undetermined. Pending investigation. That is the answer a family receives when the medical evidence cannot close the question. It does not say accident, it does not say drowning, it does not say homicide, it rules out nothing, which means it leaves every possibility standing in the room at once, including the ones no parent wants standing there. But that report carried something else. Limitations. The examiner noted the constraints he had been working under. According to TMZ, when Nolan's body was released for that second examination, it arrived without his throat, without his lungs, and without the original autopsy photographs. Now, organs are retained during a state autopsy. That happens. There are protocols for it, and retention alone is not evidence of anything improper. That needs saying plainly, because a lot of channels have used this to imply a cover-up, and it does not support that. But consider what those 2 specific structures mean in a death where the central question is whether an 18-year-old drowned. The lungs are where a drowning is proven or disproven. The throat is where you look for anything else. The pathologist hired to determine how Nolan Wells died was asked to do it without the 2 structures that answer the question. He returned undetermined. He may have had no other option available to him. Then there's the second report. The state of Mississippi has completed its autopsy. The gross findings, the toxicology, the histology, the full document, it exists. It has existed for weeks. It is sealed. Nobody outside a small circle has read a line of it, and nobody will until a grand jury reviews this case. On the 18th of August, District Attorney Angel Myers McIlrath explained why, and her statement is worth understanding rather than resenting, because it is the most misrepresented thing in this entire case. She said she understands the public's urgency to know what happened to Nolan, but that they are not taking time for time's sake. That every piece of evidence must be examined, every credible lead followed to its conclusion, every witness interview analyzed in the context of all the other evidence. That the pressure for answers does not change what the work actually requires. Then she addressed the silence directly. In Mississippi, the rules of professional conduct restrict what a prosecutor may release during an ongoing investigation. She said the restraint is not an effort to keep the truth from the public, but to protect the integrity of the investigation and the grand jury proceeding. And she committed to presenting that grand jury with the complete evidence, a thorough investigation, and an understanding of the law. So hold the shape of this, because it's the shape of everything. The one person in the state of Mississippi holding the document that could end the speculation is legally forbidden from showing it to anyone. Her silence is not obstruction, it is the rule. Which means that for 7 weeks, the entire public understanding of how this boy died has been assembled out of leaked text messages, television panels, a forged toxicology report, and videos generated by machines. Every single one of them filling a vacuum that the only credible source is prohibited from filling herself. And that is precisely why the phone matters more than any of it. It is the one piece of evidence in this case that is not sealed, not fraudulent, not anonymous, not contested as to whether it exists. Both sides agree it is real. Both sides agree it could be opened tomorrow. 48 days after Nolan Wells died, it is still the only door in this case that anybody actually has the key to. Everything you have heard about this case falls into one of 4 categories. Here they are, confirmed. Nolan Xavier Wells, 18 years old, from Ocean Springs, a wide receiver at Southwest Mississippi Community College, traveled to Horn Island on the 4th of July. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office states he was last seen near the island at around 3 in the afternoon. Marine Resources, GPS data obtained by CBS News, records the boat departing at approximately 4:31. He was reported missing that night. On the morning of the 6th of July, a park ranger found his body in the water near the shoreline. His family retrieved his phone from a friend's house on the evening of the 4th. The independent autopsy returned undetermined on both cause and manner. The state autopsy is complete and sealed pending grand jury review. A joint forensic examination of the phone was agreed and has not taken place. On the 17th of August, the NAACP Office of General Counsel joined the family's legal team, led by Kristen Clarke, who previously served as Assistant Attorney General running the Civil Rights Division at the United States Department of Justice. NAACP President and Chief Executive Derek Johnson said the world is watching and that Nolan's family deserves a thorough accounting of what happened. The Congressional Black Caucus has formally requested a Department of Justice review. 3 people have been federally charged over threats connected to this case. The toxicology report circulating online is fraudulent, and on the 19th of August, Nolan Wells would have turned 19. His family did not hold a birthday. They called for a national day of prayer, claimed by named parties, and disputed. That data was deleted from Nolan's phone. His mother says it was, his friends say it was not. That the family failed to cooperate, Tyler Cox says so, Ahmad Smith says the opposite in writing to the district attorney. That the vessel was misidentified in the official report, asserted on a television panel, never confirmed by any authority. Each of those has a name attached to it. Not one has been resolved, unverified. Everything else, the additional witnesses, the additional people supposedly on that island, the screenshots, the accounts claiming inside sources, not established. whether any person committed any offense in connection with the death of Nolan Wells. Nobody has been charged. Nobody has been named as a suspect by any authority. No cause of death has been publicly determined by the state. Hold all four of those at once, and you are holding this case honestly. Strip away the lawyers, the letters, the panels, the forged documents, the generated videos, the voicemails left on a family's answering machine by strangers in 3 states. What's underneath all of it is a boy, 18 years old, from Ocean Springs, a wide receiver with a season in front of him, a kid who filmed everything because he was the kind of teenager who assumed there would be time to look back at it later. On the 4th of July, he got on a boat with people he trusted and went to an island he had no reason to fear. And on the last day of his life, on a device that recorded where he was every minute of those 91, there is nothing that anyone has been allowed to see. On the 5th of July, before the lawyers, before the hashtags, before any of this existed, his mother sat with her phone and typed 4 words to an 18-year-old who had stood on that island with her son the day before. What kind of sunglasses? Not strategy, not evidence, not a question with a lawyer behind it. A brand, a shape, something small enough to carry through the night, and specific enough to hand to the men searching that water so they would know what they were looking for. The answer came back. Ray-Bans. She got an answer that day. She is still waiting for the larger one. Not a verdict, not an arrest, an accounting, a complete, public, documented explanation of how her son died, produced by the people whose job it is to produce it. That is not a controversial thing to ask for. It is the minimum. And until that phone is opened, until the grand jury sits, and until somebody with authority stands in front of a microphone and says what happened on Horn Island between 3 o'clock and 4:31, the only thing keeping this case alive is that people like you have not looked away yet. Cases don't die when the truth runs out. They die when the audience does. Subscribe so that when the phone is finally opened, there's still someone here to hear what came off it. Don't look away. This video is based on public reporting, publicly available statements, and documents described in the sources cited throughout. No person has been charged with any offense in connection with the death of Nolan Wells, and no authority has named any individual as a suspect. All disputed claims discussed here have been attributed to the named parties who made them. Nothing in this video should be understood as an assertion that any individual committed a crime. This is an active investigation, and the record may change.